or the future of credit collections. And with me on the stage today, we've got Richard Sharp, Tony Gundersen, Chell, make sure we've got Mel rather than Melanie, and Mark Oppermann. So welcome everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. Do you want to just do a quick round table, just in terms of just give your title, what your company does, and a little bit of background will be perfect to start off.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Tony Gundersen. I'm from Onmo, which is a credit card startup due to launch very shortly. Prior to that, I've spent best part of 30 years in financial services, from retail banking to subprime to fintech, so quite a good cross-section of stuff.
Okay, fantastic. Richard?
I'm Richard Sharp. I'm the MD of Oplo. We're a consumer lender specialising in three verticals, which motor finance, unsecured lending and home loans. We really focus on individuals' borrowing potential rather than their past, so a little bit different to other lenders, and we're very big on the ESG theme, which has been talked about before, to the fact that for every loan that we ever give to a customer, we always plant a tree on their behalf. I think it's something that we need to be all be thinking about moving forward, and otherwise there's not going to be an earth for our kids or our children's children.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Mark Oppermann, co-founder and head of sales and marketing at Webio. What we do, very simply, is we supercharge customer engagement for our customers across a range of digital channels, making that connection, then looking to automate those conversations where appropriate, and then using a range of AI to understand what the conversation is about, identify it, route it appropriately, and then manage it. So yeah, it's lots of interesting stuff.
Mel?
And I'm Mel Chell, yes it rhymes.
Yeah.
I'm still Mel, not Melanie. I am director at Equivo. I'm a lawyer by trade, so Equivo are a recoveries solution, end-to-end, created in June this year from part of Shoesmith's recoveries team, so given its own identity in June this year and focus on the complete back end of the recoveries process, mainly for consumers and commercial entities. So looking at everything from DCA early collections through late, through legal, through field, through repossessions, and right through to high court enforcement.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. So to start the discussion, digital, we talked a bit about digital technology at the start of, throughout the day. It's been like a necessity, I suppose, over the last year as we sort of had to react, particularly with remote working, etc., and from a customer point of view. And I'd say that the adoption feels like it's been almost like driven by need by the business. What technology over the period have you sort of like seen work well, and really being adopted? Richard, do you want to start with that, just in some of the things that maybe you've seen in your business?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, I think with the pandemic that everybody's spoken about today, it's accelerated technology. So I think from a pandemic perspective, there's lots of positives that come out of it. Flexible working is one thing, but acceleration of technology for consumers is another. We started using very, very quickly AI and chatbots when the pandemic first came around, especially to service customers' needs for payment holidays. Obviously, phone lines were jammed immediately. You can't service everybody via a phone. Customers don't want to use a phone either. So we very, very quickly launched an automated chatbot to deal with those customers. What we saw was around 5 times more engagement with the chatbot than we did via a phone call. It enabled our staff to be able to serve a customer within 5 minutes as against 23 minutes on the phone for that particular problem. That helps with customers' mental well-being as well, because it's a worry for customers. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So for me, the acceleration of that's now really, that's a cornerstone of our business right now. We're using chatbots a lot. I think customers' choice on the channel they use is key moving forward. And I think the important bit for us as business owners and business product providers is to ensure our consumers get a friction-free way of dealing with us. We shouldn't be telling them what that is. We should be offering what we think it is, and the consumers will tell us moving forward. So for me, right now, it's AI and chatbots, machine learning.
Mark, excuse me. Mark, you've been sort of like the centre of some of that with Webio. What have you seen in terms of like what's driven high adoption? What drives higher adoption? What do the customers really want?
Yeah, it's definitely COVID. It's funny that you'd be talking to people prior to COVID, and you would have talked about AI and chatbots and what have you. COVID hit, and the likes of Richard and other companies would go, "Oh my God, we need this," and it's nearly they're forced into it because obviously of the situation. And then a month in and 2 months in, that the customer feedback was, "Gosh, this is really good. This works." And my comment was, "Yeah, I've been telling you for the last 18 months. Why aren't you listening?" But one of the key things that we've seen over the last while is that adoption of automation. Now, one of the things that actually Sonia on the last panel was talking about was it shouldn't be digital versus the human. It's about getting that blend right, because automation is great to do a certain amount of jobs, but you have to get the blend right to make sure that, and when it comes to digital and all these other channels and what have you, it's about giving the customer a really good experience, and that is making sure that you can get that blend between the two areas. So as I say, I think COVID has been that accelerant, that definitely it has been the catalyst for companies to say we need to do things different. And even if I look at the last, say, 3-4 months, one of the recurring themes talking with people is the unavailability of staff and recruitment. It's been a huge challenge. And that, again, automation plays into that, where, you know, I have 50 staff, but I need 100. Well, actually, if you do it right with automation, you can get the same work so it is a case of where there's a number of factors happening there at the moment. Previously it was COVID, and I think, you know, there's other circumstances still continuing on where companies are naturally being, in some instances, being dragged to it. Others are more forward-seeing, and they're saying, actually, we need to embrace this fully. So, you know, you always have your laggards, but you always have your people out in front. And to be honest, I think the people who are leading the charge, they're going to be so far ahead of the others when this all settles down. Their businesses are going to be a lot more streamlined. So certainly, from my point of view, I would certainly see that's the right way to go.
And Mel, from a legal point of view, I mean, so like we talked a bit about the upstream sort of arrears process here, or even the credit adjudication process. What about from a legal sort of point of view from what you've seen? So like, where does technology, as much as chatbots, where does it fit, and where should it fit?
It doesn't historically fit really well, but as we rightly pointed out, the pace of change over the last 2 years has been huge. And actually, we are looking at legal processes in exactly the same way. It's still a collections function. Nobody in this room ever wants to, as a lender, take one of their customers to court if they can possibly help it. We want to engage. So legal is the very last resort, and actually all of our lender clients are focusing much more now on how we stop from legal and how we engage with the customers right the way through the journey. So it's much more now about pre-legal strategies, and we're seeing our lender clients move faster than we've ever seen before. And some of the retail bank clients will have real issues with this because their legacy systems, you know, it's like turning a tanker trying to just, you know, purchase services from Webio, for example, and just, you know, do it. That's just not ever been possible, but even they are starting to engage much more widely and look to their supplier networks to ensure that their customers can benefit from those more agile solutions. So I don't think it's hugely different. I just think in the same way that the legal profession are catching up and realising that this is a necessity.
Yeah. And I suppose, Tony, from a to launch point of view, I mean, you got the luxury of being able to build some of this stuff into your processes already. And how are you thinking about it in terms of like almost like being future ready?
Yeah, I think it's obviously key to us. We don't have the legacy issues that a lot of people have, but it's also very easy to still get it wrong if you're not careful. So there's a lot of testing and learning that you should be doing, both internally and also ensuring that you test it with potential customers as well. You understand, you know, who your target market is and what they're likely to want. So we're an app-based product, and the idea of quite often of the app is to make things more straightforward for people. But as I say, the danger is that you make it more complicated for people. You put too much in there. So I think what we've been very careful to do is to keep it nice and straightforward, make sure we've got the right sorts of support pages in there right throughout, make it intuitive. And it's not about speed, it's, as I say, it's about ease of use. And that's what we've looked at to make sure that we have created some friction in our processes, because we want customers to read stuff sometimes. So it's not a case of just a race to the finish of the application or whatever it may be. I think it's important sometimes to create friction in there as well, to make sure customers have the opportunity to read the information that you're putting out there as well.
So the one comment that was made to me is, is it customer preference to use digital, or is that habit? And I suppose through the COVID pandemic, it's now become much more of a habit. Like habits are now changing, and so do you think we're responding? Because before we were very much sort of like using efficiency or effectiveness to sort of drive change because it was going to be cheaper. Do you think it's that preference piece and the habit piece that is now enabling us to say, well, look, this is what the customers want, so we can now put something in?
I suppose to some extent, because we're sort of deliberately going out with an app-based product, we're almost saying, well, this is how you've got to initially deal with us, because if you don't download the app, obviously you can't get the product. But I think once you're into the actual customer relationship, I think things can change, and you've got to have some flexibility about how you're then managing the relationship with the customer outside of that.
So customer experience, I mean, it's coming back to that. It seems like that's a key part of the adoption piece. And you mentioned there around friction, around introducing friction. Let's go to Richard here around. I mean, what are some of the key themes we've got to think about when designing those journeys, right? And introducing friction is quite an interesting idea, because before this we've always been just trying to get things almost like as smooth as possible, so it's automated. But how do we start thinking about that?
I think we need to go back to the start, actually, and technology is the answer, but we need to know what the question that we're trying to answer is first. And I think a lot of businesses make the mistake of, we need technology, we need technology, but they don't know the reason why. So I think for me, what we've done at Oplo is go around and ask. There's been a lot of questions today about, is technology in replacement of people? Well, actually, no, because the technology is the output of the input of the people. And for me, we're only ever going to be able to utilise technology by the intricate conversations that we can have with our consumers, and use things like speech analytics and feedback through QA to build correct chatbots, or utilising what we can see in open banking in the right way. So we also have talked a lot in the previous sessions about in collections we do this and in lending we do this. For me, it's one journey, and the customer enters with a product, and the journey ends maybe with litigation. It may end with another product. It may end with going into collections, but I don't think we should be treating customers differently depending on whereabouts they are in the journey. It's one journey. And I think that makes the tech a lot easier to use and consume, because you may build something for a collections environment, but the amount of data that you get from the originations and the acquisitions will probably answer a lot of the questions that you're trying to answer in that part anyway. So for me, it's make sure we know what question we're trying to answer and build it from there. To Tony's point, I think it is good to sometimes break and add friction in when you need it. At first we were talking about vulnerability. Automation can't change. Automation can identify vulnerability, but it can't deal with it. And what I mean by that is, yes, you may see gambling through open banking fine, so you assume that might be vulnerable, but the technology can't deal with that. We need people to speak to that customer, or we need to have a human intervention somewhere, and it's that blend of human touch with technology that is the key moving forward, and utilising the end-to-end journey, not just collections in life. I think Guy was talking about in-life communications, and it's a big thing we do at Oplo around the start of the journey is acquisition, but we give informative information to the consumer throughout the life of their loan with us, and it's all around financial education. My daughter's fallen foul of the infamous Royal Mail text over the last 3 weeks. So we need to go out there. It's our job to be able to inform customers about that and educate them. So I think it needs to be one full journey.
And do you think there's a demographic split around that, or is it now it's just everyone?
I think there was a demographic split prior to COVID. I don't necessarily think there is at this moment in time. Even my parents are asking me how to use chatbots. What do I do with open banking? They understand it. A year and a half, well, they don't understand it, but they're aware of it. a year and a half ago, they wouldn't even know what it meant. So I think the gap's closing. There still is, but I think we, as businesses and as fintech suppliers, need to give consumers the choice of what they want to use, and then they will determine how that works.
Mm. One of the conversations has come has been a bit about sort of gamification in product design. I'm Tony, go back to you, I suppose, just in terms of like, have you been thinking about that in terms of like, how do you sort of like game it, in terms of pay down debt or those kind of things, which is another way of introducing friction to a certain way, or designing to create behaviours?
Yeah, no, I think it was mentioned earlier on that, in terms of the sport pages you have for customers, it shouldn't be sort of negative sections, positive sections. Information should be there and available for them to see right through, whether it's advice, whether it's support, or whether it's just how to go about managing, part of their finances. But yeah, and I think there's a lot of clever things you can do in terms of engaging with the customer. So even with the app-based approach that we've still got to engage with the customers. We've still got to get them to use the app. We've still got to get them to interact with us as well. It's not something that you can just sort of hand out and leave. So, yeah, it's something we appreciate. And again, as we go forward, we'll understand a little bit better what makes the customers come back to us, what makes the customers read certain articles, and what in the app is going to really engage them to support them. Because I think it's, with credit, once you've lent to somebody, that's the easy bit to some extent. It's then how you manage that customer and how you help them through the different things that may happen, whether it's a short-term issue or more medium or long-term issue, whether they suffer a life event change or whatever it may be. The aim is to have something in there which initially helps them to understand what the next best step is for them. So yeah, very much so. It's I think we've got to really work hard to engage the customer.
But both of you mentioned a little bit about the app experience. I suppose I know the app's important, but does almost like that app design thinking help in terms of process design and making it simpler? I know it might be app based, but it's almost like there's almost like a new way of thinking around things, which is based around the app. And it's almost like, certainly from a chat point of view, it's sort of like mobile chat's been sort of quite dominant, right? So I mean, do you think the app and the phone obviously is so important? Is it changing completely our design thinking completely?
To some extent, and I think a lot of it is based around creating that two-way conversation. So you're not just putting stuff out to the customer, you try and them draw them back in as well. So you can have those two-way conversations. And I think it's been said, a number of occasions that we have lots of information we're gathering through that initial process. And it's whether we're making best use of that data and that information that we get. It's we have several different sources of information we're using, whether it's Bureau, whether it's open banking, or whether it's other sources that we're using as well. But it's no good having all that data if you haven't got the capability to do something with it. Whether that's spotting something that could be of problematic in the future, or whether it's an opportunity for something in the future. But I think using the data wisely is the key, and having the skills and the capability of using that data.
Mark, I was going to let you jump in. I had another question as well, which I can...
Just on that point, I want to challenge everybody's thought when they talk about digital. Immediately everybody says app. Well, actually, that's just one channel. Lots of people don't like apps. Lots of people, take WhatsApp, for example. 2 billion users, 100 billion messages a day. That's close on 50 or so messages by every person who's on WhatsApp every day. So that's just one channel. You have Messenger, you have Viber, the list goes on and on. One of the things that we're not talking about, and we need to talk about it more, is conversational design across all of those different channels. The likes of, as you said, Richard, what's the job to be done? Rather than just saying, let's throw technology at it, what's the real job to be done? And then think about how the customer is going to engage with you over those different channels. Because if we just stick with one channel, we're sort of nearly just pigeonholing, saying, well, actually, previously we engaged with you over the phone, now we just want to do an app. Well, actually, that's not going to meet everybody's requirements. So what I would say is that people need to think a little bit wider. They need to say, yes, an app is really important, but what about web chat? What about WhatsApp? What about the other channels that will be there, like RCS and Apple Business Chat and stuff like that? All of these are going to be there. Your customers are in these places already. You need to think about opening these up, because that's actually where more and more conversations is. You're not trying to, let's say, have one channel versus the other. It's about opening them all up, and all boats will rise. We find, and proven over and over again, the more channels that you open up with a client, the more engagement that they get. The more engagement, the better level of business results, both for the business and for the customer.
So does that almost like comes back to the previous session when we were talking about managing to outcomes rather than managing a process, right? It's like, what's the outcome from a customer point of view?
I think just adding to what Mark's just said there, we can focus so much on we think this is right, we think this is right. And again, it's going back to basics. It's let's ask the customers what they want and then deliver the customer the journey that they're saying they would like to have. There's a lot to be said for products like Smart Survey, where you can go out to your consumers and instantly get feedback from them about, was the journey good, was it bad, what was bad, what can we change, what would you like? And I think a lot of financial services businesses in the past have made the mistake of, we tell the customer what they need to do. And we've also looked at things internally to go, well, at this point of the customer experience, this is happening. And we always talk about our software and our LMS does this, whereas the way that we should be looking at it is we're all customers ourselves. So there's nothing more frustrating than utilising a chatbot and a chatbot says, I don't understand. And most of us just end up pulling your hair out and throwing your phone out the window. But all we need to do is go, well, if we are getting frustrated with that, then we shouldn't be giving that to our consumer. What we should be doing is putting a little human being at the bottom of it, click it, and they switch straight to live chat, so they can actually have something to have that positive outcome. And I think sometimes, what Tony said earlier, too much data, I think, is a bad thing because you don't know what to do with it. Then you end up with, I don't think anybody's mentioned about data science today. Now, data science is incredibly important because once you get all that data coming in, you want to do something with it. But data science will really guide you as to what you do, how you do it. But you need to then link that in with your customer experience and actually ask the customer. It's a lot of work to link it all in, but actually it goes back to the comment I made earlier about just having one end-to-end journey. And there's a customer, there's the business, and there's the product. You need to interlace all three of those.
I was just going to say, ultimately, every lender wants to engage with their customers. That is the ultimate. If we have engagement, we can find a solution that is the appropriate outcome for them. And we can do that via so many different methods now. But we also have the data to know which solution is best for them. So we should be using the information that we have to try and work out for, there isn't one size fits all anymore. For this customer A, this process isn't going to work. They will only engage with us because we know, because we've tested all these different channels on a text message. They're not going to pick up the phone. They're not going to respond to a letter. So we've got that information and that data. It's making sure that we start expanding the way in which we're thinking about engagement and making sure that we're using as many different channels as we possibly can.
And how do you think about sharing some of those preferences between different elements of the process as well? So we talked a lot about going upstream in the same company, but there's also potentially going to vendors as well. Any thoughts on how can we get more intelligence around sharing that information around preferences when people want to, some of the modelling that might take place in terms of what contact channel works? Any thoughts on that? Or?
Well, that's a really interesting one, and one that taxes many lawyers' brains from a GDPR perspective, because we could, for example, be instructed in relation to Mr. Bloggs by 4 or 5 different lenders. We know full well Mr. Bloggs isn't going to respond to a letter.
Yeah.
I think we really, as a community of lenders and collection agencies and companies, need to start talking more about this, because actually, with the customer at the heart of everything that we're doing in our culture and our decision making, it's best for the customer if we share that information, but not everybody's comfortable with that.
Yeah. And what about from a technical point of view? Go back to you, Mark. In terms of are there IT requirements that are best to get the best customer experience? I mean, what are the best sort of technical requirements to start thinking about putting some of this technology in?
Yeah. Well, first off, I'll go back to what we talked about earlier. Just start with the basics. what's the job to be done? What are we actually trying to do? And I've had many a conversation where somebody is adamant they want a certain amount of or a certain piece of technology, and then you talk with them, and actually it's not really that at all. But if we jump to what are the best bits and what's needed today, we're now in such a good place to adopt many different technologies. If I go back 3 and 4 years, people talked about APIs lots and the whole integration, real time, and to be honest, it was just mostly BS that people talked. Where today, that is real. It's happening today, over different channels. Unknown customers coming into businesses. You're able to identify who they are. You're able to do the ID and V. You're able to ask questions, and really it's a case of where from let's call it a technology stack point of view, that more and more businesses are moving into where they have APIs that are suitable to be able to act as, well, I can grab different services and bring them into my business. And as you said earlier, Mel, the legacy, the big organizations and what have you, they gradually are moving there. But actually, I think the smaller businesses are probably at an advantage rather than, say, the big banks or something like that. So we have never been in as good a place as we are today. So really, businesses should be tapping into that. Now, a lot of them are, but to be honest, there's loads more they could do. So certainly, the scorecard is, definitely, good job so far, but lots more to be done.
Okay. So with the focus on digital, and I think we talked about some of this before, but I was going to ask the question sort of like blunt, I suppose, which is, is it ever going to be possible to take the humans out of the process? I mean, Richard, I think you sort of answered it a little bit before, but maybe expand on that a little bit. And, when do you decide when you have a human in versus not, from an omnichannel point of view?
So the simple answer is no. You'll never be able to take the human out, in my view. And I think that's both primarily a cultural piece as well. If you speak to your staff, you're bringing in a lot of technology, staff get worried that you're replacing them with technology, which is not actually what you're trying to do. What you're actually trying to achieve, or what you should be trying to achieve, is making sure the expertise that you have in the human is given the time to spend with the customers that they need to spend with, like we take vulnerability, for instance. Rather than saying you've got to be on the phone for 8 minutes with every single customer because we've got so many coming in from an inbound perspective, you take that away and deal with the ones that are very easily dealt with via a chatbot or via the technology that gives the staff the time to really get the right outcome from the consumer. But if it takes 45 minutes, it takes 45 minutes. Personally, I wouldn't have a go at anybody in my business that's spoken to a customer for that length of time if they've got the right outcome, because it shows compassion and empathy. And I think you struggle to do that with technology. So that's why you'll never be able to take the people out of the business. Also, to be able to launch the technology in the first place, the outcomes that the people get are the input to that technology. And what we found that works really well when we've been launching chatbots is getting the squads together to understand why are people calling us, what outcomes are you getting, and what's the reason for it. That's then the feed for the initial technology that you use. That's where you use your speech analytics to run certain word strings on certain things if you want to try and expand that. And that's how the AI will grow. It won't grow on its own. It has to come from the person to begin with. So effectively what I think will happen, or is happening now, out of 100% of inbound calls that we get now, probably 2/3 of those will be able to be dealt with via technology if the consumer wants it. And then 1/3 of that will still go through to an agent that's specialised in vulnerability, it's specialised in acquisitions, it's specialised in empathy. And that's the bit that we can't lose, and that's the important piece.
And how are you thinking about outcomes? I mean, so we talk about having good customer outcomes, and there's a good outcome on a call, there's a good outcome in a month's time, there's a good outcome in a year's time as well, and those might all be slightly different in terms of how you think about that. So how do you think about that in terms of like the measurement regime and sort of like the controls, and particularly as you put that into a digital environment as well?
I think that's about what I would class as evergreen content going to consumers. So they'll ring you when there's a problem, or we will ring them when there's a problem, or we'll contact them when there's a problem. That's financial services has always been, we'll treat you brilliantly when I give you a loan, and I'll probably never speak to you again until you go into debt. And that's the bit that needs to change. So when I talk about evergreen content, what I mean is from our business, we engage with our consumer all of the time. We give them hints and tips of what we think they're doing well on, what they're not doing well on by utilising open banking, giving them financial fitness scores, identifying if they've got children, we can bring some content to them, be it through TikTok or whatever that is, to help with the financial education of those consumers. What that does is give you constant information back from your consumer base. Rather than waiting for something to happen, you can be proactive with it, because the behaviour of that customer, how they interact with you, will give you a predictive model of the propensity of them going into this bucket is a lot higher. So for me, the engagement it's not about have another loan, have another loan, have another loan. It's looking at how they interact with you, what they're interacting with you, and what information you can gain from them. And then app-based is brilliant from a notifications perspective, but not everybody wants to use an app. So it's just about making sure that you continually engage with your consumer and they see the value in it. And then that you'll always be front of mind with them for their next transaction, but then you have a relationship as well.
Tony, how are you thinking? Are you thinking about those similar kind of things in terms of like your process design? Because there's the acquisition piece as well. Don't forget that, as well as the customer service and the collections piece as well.
I mean, when we've set ours up, we never envisaged there wouldn't be any need for human interaction at some point. I think different parts of the customer journey require different support. So it will be, as we said before, and quite often it will be, and it should be driven by the customer. So we can support a customer as much as they need to be supported in the app. We'll have a customer services that will have a range of different ways of the customer being able to contact us. And I think that's very important, because you need, I think, a proper holistic approach. If you're going to get the best outcomes from the customers, it's not by forcing them down one route, it's by establishing which is there. Because for some customers one day, SMS might be the best way of them contacting us. Another day, it might be through the app, etc. They're not necessarily going to have one way that is always going to be the best. So I think a range of different contact channels are really, really important, and each one of those contact channels is just as important as the other. So you support each one of those channels in a consistent way. So whichever way the customer is contacting you, they're going to get as equally a good response to what their need is. I think so. We've never even thought about whether we need human or not human. It was always, even in a technology-driven business, I think it's the technology-driven business is set up by humans, and therefore, there's always going to be, but there's definitely parts of the process that can and should be automated, because that makes it easier for the customer as well. There's certain parts of the journey. There's a lot of information now you don't need documents in for. There's ways of checking people's identity and other things remotely, so it doesn't halt the journey or mean that the customer has to break off and go and find something. And in the same way, at the other end of the journey, there's ways of supporting customer to do their I&E without them having to go and root for bills or find information that not necessarily always going to be to hand. They've got a problem. The last thing they want to do is go rooting around finding documents that they haven't got a clue where. So you can use technology to support what you do, not necessarily in place of what you do. But you have got to be careful to get the balance right, because you don't want the two different things doing the same thing, and therefore you're just doubling your cost rather than giving a better service. So I think it's got to be a well thought through strategy. It's not something you can just sort of say, yeah, we need both, therefore we'll have both. I think it was said earlier on, you can see some customers that might come through one channel and then 10 minutes later through another channel. Well, that's because you haven't done something right. That's because you haven't supported them in the right way, or they haven't been able to get the outcome they needed. So again, it's important that you understand what's happening in the business in that respect.
So the efficiencies to be gained by saving the repeat contacts throughout the journey and sharing the information across the journey as much as it is, just automating a particular step.
That whole channel escalation is when you actually get down and you look at that and sit down with people who will give you the overview. It's unbelievable how costly that can be to a business. So it is in everybody's interest, both the customer and you as the business, to make sure that you are designing it right, that you can actually give the questions. Because it's only natural that if I don't get in one way, I want this solved, I'm going to go to the next, I'll go to the next, I'll get onto Twitter, I may even ring them. So yeah, that is a real issue, that people will have the bit between their teeth They want something done, and all of a sudden that can be a huge cost in the business. So getting that design is really important.
Yeah. Mel, I was going to come back to you, just sort of sitting almost like towards the back of the process in terms of like, do you think some of the things the cases you see, do we make enough? We talked a little bit about new information, but we make enough value, extract enough value from the information we already have in existing systems. I mean, do you think there's opportunity there? Do you find that the things that are kind of missed in terms of opportunities, in terms of using contacts from earlier in the life cycle, those kind of things?
Yeah, I think that's partly outsourcing, and so it's really important that we get as much data as we possibly can to do the best job, because information gets lost. I mean, one of the reasons Equivo was created was because our lender clients were saying to us, there are too many handoffs in this back-end process. We start with a panel of DCAs, we move through to a panel of repossession agents, we move through to a panel of law firms, and at every point that customer gets handed off, information gets lost. And actually, if you put all of that infrastructure together, the outcome for the customer is far better. So I totally agree. Giving a real live example, you could be talking to a customer about a return of goods order for the vehicle that they can no longer afford. And it's gone all the way through a lender's collections process. It's been outsourced for legal. And we know that customer, from talking to them, are working a certain shift pattern, are only available at a certain time, are using the car at certain times. You have much more productive conversations on a certain day of the week when they're not working. But when you send a case back for repossession, again, that all gets lost, and the repossession agent goes and finds that all out for themselves the hard way. Yeah. And actually, that is all valuable data which helps engagement. So put that all together and try and make sure, if we are instructing suppliers in a supply chain at the back end of the process, that we give them as much of that data as we can.
Yeah, the information flow we were talking about before, really. Yeah. And we haven't talked about open banking yet. I said we were going to talk about it here. In terms of so it's been a hot topic. I'd say, the last, for a while actually, but I suppose the last 6 months it's really been sort of like ramping up. I suppose particularly for Richard, because you sort of like from a live book point of view, are you seeing from adoption rates point of view, and maybe we talk a little bit about what the rest of the panel thinks around like key reasons for success. But Richard, do you want to use open banking or?
Yeah, so open banking, again, in my opinion, has been helped by COVID. Most lenders pulled back at the start of COVID for the majority of last year and this year. People are only just going back into full-blown lending again. What open banking has done or will do, customers now, you've used the two words, it's value exchange, right? From a consumer perspective, why should I use this? What's in it for me? So we look across the price comparison website and aggregator market. They're all now adopting open banking on the front end of their journeys, which is very, very important, because I know most of our business, especially from an unsecured lending perspective, comes via aggregators, price comparison websites, because you just can't compete with them on a PPC perspective. So the importance there is what they're trying to do with us is build that value exchange with the consumer and educate them to go, why should I use this? Is it lower pricing? I don't actually think it is that. What I think it's about is I could potentially give a customer a yes rather than a no. And the reason I can do that is we can have a look at affordability, thin file, identify vulnerable customers. You take more information about behaviour, so you can probably give a more bespoke product to that consumer. So we all know as a business why it's really good. I think the work that we need to do now is to the consumer, letting them, explaining to them why it is a good thing to do. And if I look at my Halifax app now, I can engage with open banking through that. But it's just like one tile that says engage with open banking, doesn't tell me anything about it. So I think we've got a lot of work to do. I think Equifax came out with a report last week where they were saying that the engagement levels have risen from, I think, 47% to over 80% in open banking now, which is what everybody's seeing, around about a 77% engagement rate. And that when you talk to financial services providers who aren't using open banking right now, I think just under 60% of them are going to be using it within the next 12 months. I actually think it's going to be sooner than that, because they're going to get left behind. This is going to be a prerequisite of consumers, and I think consumers will start asking for it. That if I use open banking with you, can I get a better product? Can I get a better price? And I think it will help us all get evidence need more for the consumer as well. It will definitely help with vulnerability at the front end. And I think with the data that we can get from a behaviour perspective in open banking, it helps that complete journey. You can use it at acquisition, you use it in life, and you definitely can use it in collections to propensity model forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go to Mel just in terms of like, so the very high adoption rates there, and I think some of that gets skewed by the acquisition piece, right? So definitely where there's a strong value exchange there, the back end piece and collections, there's always been quite a lot of pushback. I still hear pushback regularly around whether that's, are customers really going to adopt it or not? I mean, is there any kind of view on that in terms of it? Is it increasing? How does it best fit? Will it increase?
We're just implementing it at Equivo, but speaking to lender clients who are already using it, it's increasing, and I think it's about trust. So certainly at the front end, why wouldn't I give you all the information because I want that thing that's going to help me buy? Whereas at the back end, sometimes customers are aware that they're putting a bit of a healthy spin on things to try and prolong the length of time they'll be with an asset, for example, and avoid litigation. And they will promise you that they can make payments, and they will spend 40 minutes with an agent completing a very detailed form which shows that they have some availability to pay. And actually then, if that payment goes on to break, it's not helping anybody. It's not a good outcome for that consumer. So I think it's certainly, in terms of value exchange, they understand it's 40 minutes with me now, or it's literally 5 seconds, and you can go about your day. And what we will get from that is an accurate picture of your financial position. But it's that reputational problem and trust, in my view, that everyone thinks, or they're debt collectors, they're collectors. I can't trust this process. I don't want them to see my data. I don't want them to know how bad it is. And we need to change that. We need customers to feel comfortable that they will get forbearance that is appropriate, that they can have payment holidays, that we can enter affordable payment arrangements that are sustainable in the longer term. And once that reputational issue starts to change, I think the adoption rates will increase. Yeah. But we do have to win that trust.
And there's a linkage there with the vulnerability discussion around, like the doctor example, almost like it's like people might be hesitant. I hear around they don't want to know where exactly you're spending your money if you've got it, you do gambling or those kind of things. It's like how do you get beyond that, and how do you build trust? I mean, Tony, have you got any thoughts on that, or Mel, certainly come back if you've got your thoughts on that.
I think, certainly from our point of view, we've looked at very much at the front end at the moment, and it is all about good communication to the customer, explaining to them what the process is, what the benefits are. From our point of view, there's obviously lots of benefit because there's very, very rich data that you can get. But there's also the other side of that is that there is sometimes the customer will allow you to see what they want you to see. So you've got to be very careful with it. It's not the sort of panacea of everything just because open banking's got a long, long way to go yet. I think as people become more, we've seen for how long, but people have been telling you don't give your bank details out, don't expose your bank account to anybody. So I think there is going to be a certain amount of people that, I think it's a different, when you're offering something to somebody, then they'll do most things to get through your process. I think at the other end it's slightly different, so you've got to again sell the benefits of why you want that information and how it will help the customer if you're able to see that information. And I think it's all about good communications and a good explanation to the customer of what the benefits of doing that are. And I think it will take time to do, but I think if you can sell the benefits, like in most cases, the customers will follow that. But it's there's bound to be. Certainly, once you've gone from a lender to then somebody else, you might not recognise the name. So you've taken a credit card from Onmo, next year thing you're with somebody else, and they're asking you to do something you don't even know who they are. So that line of communication and that sort of match up between where they started and where they ended up, and that the whole idea of that account being passed to somebody is to further support the customer and trying to help them through a process rather than them just being handed off because they're a problem.
Yeah.
Just quickly to add, I agree with what's been said, and I think one thing that's helped massively with the trust piece is the app-to-app way of doing open banking. Before, when people were used to screen scraping, it didn't look right, it was in iframes, and it was an awful experience. So the app-to-app has definitely helped with trust, and I think there's 3 bits to it. That if we can bring customers in utilising open banking and give them a product whereby before they may not have had one, that will help. There's a usage in life around if they engage with you with open banking within the lifetime, and you can give them financial fitness scores of how they run their current accounts, give them hints and tips if we think you're spending a little bit too much on your utilities. That adds value in the middle there, because we're not gaining anything from that as a business. It's just about financial education. When they then come to, unfortunately, being in a collections environment, because they've had 2 cases of, I've used it to get a loan, in my life that I've actually changed this because of utilising this, they may be more entitled or may feel better about using it in the back end, and I think that's how that you will do the trust. I don't think it's going to happen anywhere else.
So a question just came in around, which actually fits quite well with the last session, around data and the fact that data has changed during the pandemic as well. So, if you look at it, pre-pandemic, we had one set of data. We've now gone through this change over the last 12, 18 months, and it's like we've got different characteristics. We've all been sitting at home. We've got different characteristics around. We might have been saving more versus not. And are we going to have like a new set of data? Now we're travelling. We're all sitting here in Manchester. I've been spending money at Pret a Manger again, and it's kind of like it's going to be different. How do we start thinking about that, and how is it going to change our credit risk adjudication, and then the collection segmentation process?
We've done a lot of this at the moment by looking at the current macro impacts of the future lending that we're doing. We've got a view that CRA scores at the moment are false. People are being overscored for the actual performance that a customer's going to give, probably by about 10 or 15 points. So if you look at it, if a customer was going to be absolutely great and the best price that you can give him, he's probably dropped down an echelon now, but will score still the same, but the performance will be different, so that's going to impact your ROIs. We've already talked about cost of living. Cost of living is going up, so we need to be in front of that. So I think the CRA data that's coming today from just a gauge score, Delphi score, isn't as valuable at all, because it's over a false period of time where people have been having payment holidays, they haven't been lending because there's been no product. So therefore, the old way of doing a scorecard was what's your frequency of how many loans have you had, how many accounts have you opened recently, is gone. It's irrelevant now. Open banking can definitely help with that, but it's about getting in front of yourself and being proactive now and looking at behaviour rather than a credit score. And I think what you'll find with the CRAs in its current guise will disappear. They're all trying to be data companies. There's new data companies coming up with some really good data points, but I'll go back to the same thing. You can have as much data as you possibly can consume, but if you haven't got any data science to understand why you need to use it and what the solution is, then you may as well not have it. But I think from a pure credit score perspective, the scores are overinflated at the moment, and we need to be looking at different ways of using it, and open banking could be one of those.
Yeah. Melanie, any thoughts on that, more in front from the back end point of view, or from so would you, in terms of like, I suppose, is the behaviour that we've seen previously, is that indicative around what will be going forward, and do we need to think about things differently, or is it just the process? It's just because you're probably just more it's just the process where you are now.
I think behaviours are changing, and the whole human versus machine thing. We all agree in this room, I think, that we need humans at the moment, but I've got a son who's 18 who would never, ever be speaking to a collector on a telephone, and, he's never going to change that perspective. He might get more mature, who knows. But I agree totally that we should have systems for process, the humans to add the value, but will that always be the case? How quickly have tendencies and behaviours changed in the last 2 years? That's 2 years.
Yeah.
So in 10, are we still going to have call centres? I don't know. Don't know the answer to that. I think there is a whole generation coming through that just engage digitally, and it's a completely different expectation and requirement.
Yeah, that's a great segue to my next question, which is the last question, which was, what do you think the future technology we need to think about today? So we might have a crystal ball, but what are we got to be looking at today? There's quite a few things that are sort of like that are out there, be it video calls, the Facebook metaverse, I suppose, that came out now. What do you think's what we've got to think about now? We could be planning for.
I was just to Mel. I think and the technology will do lots, but I still think that you will need the agents, even if it's over digital. we are emotional animals at the heart, that, we are unpredictable. You have to, in that, mentioned it earlier, that conversational design, you have to build in exception management. So I don't think, and look, gosh, I'm the one who sells the technology. Use it, please, lots. But still, I'd always say, no, you have to have the human element. So where that's going is, I think that it's just going to get clever and clever, that the ability to train the AI now is so much easier. Previously, it was a room of 40 developers who probably didn't wash for a month, so you wouldn't went into the room, where now it's nearly a no-code environment that, normal people can start to train these systems. That's how it is today. It's super easy. So that is where it's just going to accelerate. I don't think it's going to accelerate to the point where every human element touch is going to be gone. And I think it's just going to open up so many more channels. And that, I think, will be the challenge for many businesses. There'll be so much information out there coming at them. What bits of information do they bring into that conversation with the customer that will actually add value? Not just give information for information's sake. What's going to add value for both the business and because we will be awash with information, we'll have too much of it, and we won't know what to do with it.
So the challenge becomes finding the needle in the haystack.
Yes, yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So, go on, Richard.
Quickly, I think for me, we haven't even touched the sides with the technology that's available today. There's so much open source stuff out there that's available that we haven't even touched the sides with. I think we need to nail what we've got available today, and that will inform what we need to do tomorrow. And I think there's an issue where we try and jump too soon, and then that will mean we go backwards because we don't truly understand the technology that's available today. How can we jump to tomorrow? I think we really need to nail ourselves on what is available from an open source perspective at first, because there's some great stuff out there, some really, really neat stuff. Once we know what that looks like and implement that will take us to the next stage.
Yeah. Tony, any thoughts?
I think for me, it's always about not overcomplicating things. I mean, at the end of the day, my business is to find the right people for my credit cards, and it's then once you've got the right people in, it's how you manage them through there. Everybody's used to their mobiles nowadays. Even now, around the tables now, most people probably are either about to look at their phone or they're looking at the phone. So it's hard to see how that's going to be replaced. But what's in your phone, in terms of the quality of the apps and what they can do is probably what will change. But it's really hard to say what's going to, because of the changes that the pandemic has forced. People have probably got to take a step back and make sure, because we can see it already, where I am with my wife, they've sort of all gone back into work. I can see in a lot of public services, they're sort of asking people to come back into work. So a lot of maybe the steps that we made, if you like, that will look like forward steps, probably are going to stagnate for a while, because there's a lot of businesses who want their people back in there.
Change fatigue. We've done so much. It's now like, let's consolidate.
Exactly. So things, we have to understand a lot about what's happened and at the pace of which we've done it. For some businesses, they may have gone too far. They may not be able to cope with what the changes they've made. Yeah. Let's say that's where we're slightly fortunate in as much as that we've been able to observe and try and make the best of what's happened. Yeah. But for the people with the legacy issues, have they just made maybe things worse for themselves? Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Just on that point, Chris, I'd agree, Tony, that a lot of companies they've implemented lots of change, but they've implemented too much too quick. And it's a case of where if you were to sit down with them, they aren't able to identify what actually are the bits that are making the difference. Oh, well, it's up by 3%. Great. There's 6 constituent parts to that. What bits are influencing those? So sometimes, and again, it's nearly counterintuitive. As I said, this is what we do. But actually, what we're always saying to our clients is, look, step by step. Understand, do it bit by bit, get the base level, get that, what's the baseline, and then build on that. Some of the things that you do and some of the technologies that you implement will have a negative impact. And nearly sometimes fail faster. Get to the point where you actually are understanding what you're doing, the impact it's going to have, but then use that as a positive. So I absolutely agree. I think some companies have rushed into it because they needed to. I would actually think somebody could say, well, actually, let's just understand that constituent parts to see where actually the real value is being delivered, rather than just looking at it as one great application to say, look at the difference it's made.
Okay. So maybe just in one sentence, I was like, so that was going to be the last one. I've got one last one, which is, so in one sentence, means so if we look at what we've got to be thinking about now, what should we be worried about? What should we be keeping our eye on today? And so Mark, I think you're saying there, so like you've got to be consolidate what you've got to make sure it works. Would be an example. I mean, what do you think we've got to look at the next 12, 18 months? What's the one technical or technology we've got to look at the next 12, 18 months? Top of mind.
I think if I was to sort of put a generic spin on it, it would be the APIs that you use in your business. It was talked about previously, a couple of years ago, businesses are using it today. It will give you so much power, so much data, and actually you will have the potential, and I use this around data sometimes. It's like the compulsive hoarder, that they have a house full of stuff that they're never going to use. Actually, what will you use? So that's the challenge, I think, for a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
I'd agree. I think agile APIs are a must. Kafka-based APIs are the way to go moving forward, because it just gives you agility all the way through, and they'll always be updated whether you go. I think before we always used to talk about service-based architectures. Well, that's fine, but you need the agile Kafka-based JSONs to be able to move forward. So I think that's where we need to go.
From my perspective, it's one size doesn't fit all. It's remembering customer outcomes and customers as individuals and looking at those omnichannels and working out what works for them.
Tony, last thoughts?
I think it's very true. You need to understand your customer base more than ever. There's so much data available. Make sure you've got the capability to understand what that data is telling you and then make good use of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fantastic. Thanks again, you guys, the four of you, for providing the insight. It's been fantastic. So thanks very much. And I just we're at the end now, and I suppose I just wanted to say thank you to all of the speakers we've had over the day. Hopefully everyone's found it interesting and insightful. We've had a great bunch of people here, and thanks for everyone for making the time to speak. And of course, thanks to the sponsors as well. So thanks everyone. And I think now we're going to have a break before there's the awards evening for those who are coming in the evening. So thanks everyone here, and thanks everyone for today.